Hi everyone, this is Dango. In this video, we are going to talk about the tier list for Global Server Season 4. So this tier list is basically to help players to prepare for the Season 4 of Apex Arena in the Global Server. But also if you are in the other server like Japan server, Korean server, Southeast Asian server, you can also use this as reference for future characters, which characters will be better in the future. For example, there are a lot of older characters like Sonya, Amelia. Those are characters you can get from the beginning. They are very good after they get the 3 cost skill, so you can use those info as a reference for the future of Apex Arena. And then I'm going to go to the detail of Season 4 in Global Server. So basically for Season 4, following the playoff of Season 3 is basically a period where Juggler already got the 3 cost skill, which is a very strong and powerful skill. Basically, this skill changed the meta of the Apex Arena. The AoE meta becomes very strong. So now, the playstyle basically is divided to tank push single target playstyle, tank push AoE style, and also rush or meteor style. So basically, it is very hard for you to have a box and with like all the different strategy in your box. It will only make your box actually weak compared to other people. So the recommended way is to basically have 2 playstyles. For example, I have a very heavily single target focused box and then I put some assassins in. Or I have an AoE box, I put some single target in. Or I have AoE box, I put some assassin in. Or I have a rush box, I put some AoE and single target in. So basically this is how you make your box strong. It is not like just pick all the SS tier and S tier characters together into one box. This is not the way to build your box. Your box should actually focus on like 2 of the playstyle and modes, and then you just focus on these 2 strategy, either like single target or tank push. Some of the Chinese players they kicked out all the assassins in the box. They kicked out even Zareda in the box. They just play two style. And on the other hand, some players kicked out Landius in their box. They basically only have like AoE strategy and some assassins in the box. So both way it can work, but it is not recommended that you try to have like too many of these things in the box. For example, you have Landius, Juggler, S-Tail. Although some players have this kind of box, I don't really recommend you to build because having 3 tanks is still not very ideal from the pick and ban standpoint, because then people can easily kind of like predict what you are doing from your pick and ban, and that's not really the best way to do. So usually I would still say focus on 2 of these style here, and then maybe you can add like 1 assassin to the, for example, if you are focusing on single target and AoE strategy, maybe just add Zareda in a box and not care the others. That should be good enough usually. And I want to see some of the changes basically compared to the Season 3 tier list. So first, the changes are new characters. Iris, a very strong single target and AoE character. This is why I'm putting Iris in the middle. This guy is very strong single target character. He can one-shot Juggler after he dispel the water from Juggler, or he can do heavy AoE damage as well. And he actually also fit in a rush strategy because this guy can have 10 spots, 5 plus 4 plus 1, 10 spots of threatening range. So this is a very high threatening range character as well. So yeah, Iris is one of the I call it Iris broke the game. It's just a very nasty and strong character to have. I'm going to introduce more of him in my future videos, but yeah, just that you guys know, Iris is a very strong character. Iris is basically like the Yulia in Season 2, his spot. It's a very strong and kind of must-have character too if you are playing the Apex Arena. Licolis is not as good as Iris, but she is very good in the AoE strategy team. She has a huge range of AoE that can generate the area effect. So basically, area effect is a new concept. If the enemy or your characters is like when they end their turn in the specific area, they will get the healing from Nicholas, or your enemy is going to get debuff from Nicholas. So this is basically a very strong AoE character, and also she is another faction buff for the Dark faction. The faction buff itself is very strong. It increases the damage dealt for the Dark faction characters. So that's very strong. Rini, after getting her 3 cost skill, becomes one of the key characters in the AoE strategy. And also because Rini can deal a ton of debuffs here, Rini is considered as better compared to other AoE characters like Leonhardt, who basically cannot deal that many debuffs there. Leonhardt can also deal like very high damage, but usually when you are trying to play AoE strategy, these AoEs will either they need to dispel or they need to apply debuff. So in this case, Rini is much better compared to Leonhardt. Or Angelina here is actually in the middle between tank push and rush. So if you check the current player, for example, Yip and Nick, one of the players in the global server already showed us how strong Angelina is. Basically use Angelina to turn the table around. A very strong character. It is very RNG dependent in some case, but yeah, I mean relying on RNG is not bad, right? If you can rely on RNG and it can help you win the battle, then it still works. The 3 cost scale of Angelina just makes Angelina very very strong. Angelina used to be not bad already. It's just with the 3 cost scale, Angelina's versatile. Angelina was already a very versatile character. She can do single target, she can do AoE Dragon Breath, she can be supportive, she can, provide this free mobility for your friendly units with this web scale. She has a huge strengthening range, and yeah, it's a very versatile character. She can also help your tank survive better. Yeah, it's just a very versatile character. And now with the 3 cost, she just becomes very good for, especially for rush strategy. He no need to say. Olivia, a lot of players will not agree with me, but he's actually the key for the rush player. Usually rush players will not have many healers in their box, but they will have Olivia in the box. And usually people, I recommend when people fighting against those players, I usually say you probably second ban Olivia, and they were like, oh no, why should I second ban Olivia? He's an SR character. He is a SR character that can heal and provide the mobility buff, and himself have the one of the highest AoE damage. I mean, not the highest, but very high AoE damage in this game. And also, yeah, he has extremely high mobility within. It's just a very very strong supportive and also damage dealer character. Yeah, it's actually very strong and fit in those kind of rush playstyle very well. So again, to counter rush strategy, I still recommend you to ban Olivia early. And this Detonate, yeah, people were going crazy for Detonate. So I probably don't need to explain why she's so strong. Yeah, if you are not familiar with her, can just check my video on Detonate. She's just a very strong character overall. She's both supportive and also a high damage dealer. So Sonya has tank kill potential after we get the new accessory that is going to be released from the global server soon. So this accessory basically adds both the attack and intelligence, which is needed by Sonya. I mean, both intelligence and attack are very good for Sonya. And also it breaks the last ride effect by applying a fixed damage before entering the battle. So if Juggler is not using Bracer, Juggler is basically dead. And if Juggler is also, for other characters, if they are not using the troop of these, like, if they are not using the same type of the troop, for example, if Listel is not using the demon troop, then you can actually also kill Listel with the new accessory. So that's very good, very good. And also Yulia actually drops from S to A. Yulia is still solid because you have certain weight counter Yulia, but if you pick and ban around Yulia, you ban all the debuff, you pick the gospel for Yulia, then she can still be very very strong and hard to deal with. But yeah, she is not fitting a playstyle if you are focusing on rush and AoE. then she's not fitting you because, yeah, as I said, you just don't want to have so many in your box. Those AoE and rush characters, they usually have a very high threatening range. They have long legs, right? But Yulia is a short leg character. So yeah, this just not censored very well. You cannot have other characters already jumping in and try to kill your opponent, and Yulia is still sitting back and doesn't do anything. So this is not working. Yeah, this is why for some player Yulia is not good, but for some player Yulia is still very solid. Amanda, after getting the 3 cost scale, can be very strong for single target team. So her basically she can make Omega very strong as well, but you know, if you have Amanda, those Claret and Metal Mystery, they will have the potential to kill the Juggler, the Landius, or even the Estel. So that's a very strong support for any single target character. Leonhardt both can do single target and AoE, so I'm putting him in the middle. He is not as broken as he used to be, but still a very solid character. Listel's problem is basically her mobility is only 4. Compared with other characters, Listel is no longer the queen of the Apex arena. She used to be very strong in Season 1. Like a lot of players, they just first ban Listel. But now, Listel is no longer worth a first ban, sometimes not even worth the second ban. But I mean, Listel is still there. I mean, she still do the heal reverse thing. If you don't have Gospel, you can still being whacked by Listel. Sakura kind of do similar thing compared to Listel. Sometimes Sakura can even works better after the 3 cost skill. So basically the 3 cost skill is a very huge range AoE that can apply heal block. So Sakura fits in very well with the AoE strategy. And also Reinforce is very strong after the 3 cost skill. Reinforce is actually, I think, slightly better than Leonhardt in certain way. But Leonhardt still has the juggler kill potential, so that one, you know, Reinforce cannot replace. But just like if you forget about the single target contribution, then Reinforce, I think in most cases is going to be better than Leonhardt. But the best weapon for Reinforce is going to be the range sword, so you can make sure your Reinforce always hit as many targets as possible, so he can trigger his talent easier. And then Alestrio is very strong, especially in the wall map. So at first I was thinking Alestrio maybe is only very good in the wall map, but it turns out that she's not terrible in the sky map. She's not terrible in the water map. She's not terrible in the open map as well. So yeah, it turns out that Alestrio is actually pretty good, right? I mean, there is no such map that has no defensive bonus and also no grasslands. So as long as you have grassland, you have the defensive bonus, then Alestrio have a way to play out. So that's a very strong character overall. So I used to think Diahard is very bad, but Diahard, I mean, if you're playing rush strategy, Diahard's threatening range is actually very huge, right? And she still has the kill potential, especially after he gets the 3 cost skill. He can stun you, if not kill you, right? So that's pretty solid. So Sumari is one of the characters I kind of ignored in my previous tier list. But yeah, turns out that I think she performs pretty good if you are trying to rush, especially if you are doing a time faction team. Some players, they, as I mentioned, they kick out Landius in their box. What they have is Estil and Sumari and Joshua and and also Yusuke. So they have a very full-time faction team. They also have Angelica sometimes. So basically, these 3 characters can all call faction buff, and Sumari becomes a very good rush character because she has the mobility plus 3 scale with the double AoE. The AoE also allows her to have 1 extra life. So basically, what she can do is she jumps in, she uses the AoE, she attracts the power. She basically is a meat wall against your opponent. Your opponent needs to kill her to reach the other characters of you, and she has double life, so that's very good actually. And then Yusuke is still very solid. It's not as good as what Yusuke used to be, because you know he still cannot do much before you kill the tank. But yeah, basically, if you kill the tank and you still have Yusuke, you probably win the battle. And then Luna is there. Luna is actually very versatile now, right? Luna can initiate a rush strategy. Luna can be used to counter all the magical attack, no matter it is a AoE magical attack or single target magical attack. Luna can be there to counter. So that's actually a very solid character, a both supportive character. I mean, it's more like a supportive character for now. You don't really hope Luna to kill enemy's tank like what some player did in season 1. You don't, yeah, this is never happened. Luna cannot be used to kill tanks anymore. But she is just a very strong supportive character. And then Amelia is a very strong single target focused tank. If you know your opponent is using a box like Claret, Night of Mystery, Yulia, then if you just put your Amelia there, it is not like those characters can do anything to Amelia. So this is a strong counter to tank push single target strategy. I would say, yeah, this Amelia in this case is playing a much more of a counter role instead of the more aggressive role. So Vigors is pretty solid single target as well, especially good at killing land use. Then let's move on to Ritual and Shelfonio. So both characters are, I would say, still pretty useful, but it's just not as good as the other characters. For example, if you compare Shelfonio and Ritual with Leonhardt, they don't have the mobility of Leonhardt. Leonhardt teleport can easily follow up with other characters like Juggler, yeah, Reinforce, yeah. So they have like easy follow-ups, but Ritual, you still only have 3 mobility. So the 3 cost skill is pretty long range, but the 3 cost skill needs to couple with other characters still to work. So Ritual compared to the other characters is not as good in an AoE team. Shelfonio kind of have the same issue. If you have the special gear triggered, then usually you can have enough distance to follow up. But if you don't have that triggered, then yeah, it's very hard. I mean, you cannot only count on the 30% chance to trigger every turn so that Shelfonio can do something. So those are the limitations. But if you are like building a heavily AoE focused box, then it is still very good to have Ritual and Shelfonio in the box, right? Especially to counter some specific players they like to ban your Gospels. Having 3 Gospel in your box is very good. For example, you can have Ritual, Liana, Italit, all of these Gospel in your box, and then they cannot ban out your Gospel within 1 ban. So this is another reason to have Ritual in the box. But overall, they are just like useful, is not super good. Gizlov leads a very strong faction now, cause the Gizlov faction, mystical faction, is getting stronger and stronger. Now that Yusuke is very strong, right? The Juggler is in Gizlov faction, Zareda is in Gizlov faction, and their Reinforce is in Gizlov faction. So there are a lot of strong characters in the Gizlov faction. The problem is still Gizlov himself. He's still not doing that much. After the 3 cost skill for Gizlov, the Mega construct is actually very interesting, and it do a lot of AoE damage as well. But before that, Gizlov is very hard. I mean, I can see people put Gizlov in a box, but it's going to be more of a supportive role. Gizlov can actually carry a little bit after his 3 cost skill, so I'm probably going to put Gizlov to A level after he gets the 3 cost skill, but right now he's going to be in B level, which is useful, which you can still have him in the box, but compared to the other characters, maybe his priority is not that high. For some specific box that focus on mystical team, for example, if you have both Reinforce, you have the Juggler, you have Yusuke, you have, yeah, this kind of, you have Yulia, you have these mystical characters in your box, then maybe putting Gizlov is not bad. Lamta is kind of similar thing with Gizlov. If you don't have Gizlov in the box, the only character that is going to cause faction buff is like land use. I'm not sure if you also try to have Sigma in the box. So if you have Sigma, maybe you can solve the problem. Lamta can do a lot of AoE damage, her threatening range is pretty good. The problem is just, yeah, the faction buff is hard to get. If you can solve the problem, if you build a specific boss for Lamata, then she can be useful. But other case, if you don't have Gizdo, if you don't have Sigma in the box, I didn't see why you should put Lamata in the box. So Sherry is a pretty good character in regular season. It is not as good in playoff because people can prepare to not be killed by Sherry. But in regular season, you know, they don't know who they are playing against. If you have a Sherry and they are not building characters to survive Sherry, then it could be dangerous for them. So Sherry is very good for, yeah, for like rushing for higher score in the Apex Arena in a regular season. But I don't know how good she is in a playoff, because players will have strategy that fighting against the Sherry to make sure, like, for example, to get the SR win for their characters, to build like bulky characters to counter Sherry. Yeah, so it's more of a regular season character. So Verner is actually a counter to Rush strategy. So he's not super strong for Rush strategy itself, but he's a counter to Rush strategy. So if you have land use and then you pick the Verner, it can counter well for this kind of Diahat, Alastrio, Zareda, Hihei, this kind of character. So he's more of a counter to no tank box. So Sigma is the same thing, punish when the player has no tank. If you are playing against a player who picks no tank, like they first pick Iris or Zareda, this kind of thing, then you just pick Sigma after you get your tank. You will always have advantage in this battle against the other player. So Leon is kind of a rush strategy player playstyle, or it can be some AoE as well. Yeah, Leon is very RNG character. The RNG may not always favor you, so playing on Leon is pretty risky. Yeah, I don't really like putting Leon in my box, but if Leon is in my opponent's box, I still show Leon some respect. I still need to ban him not very late, because the RNG can always fuck you up, right? So this Matthew is pretty solid support for the protagonist faction, right? There are actually a lot of strong characters in the protagonist faction. Yusuke, Sakura, and yeah, the protagonist faction we have, yeah, and Lamata is also the protagonist faction, Landius, Ritual. So there are a lot of things Matthew can buff, and also Matthew can provide the mobility +1 if you are using Flyer Matthew. And to be honest, the only Matthew you are using in the PvP should be the Flyer Matthew that can buff the mobility of the other characters. So he can be a very, very good supportive unit, and especially very good for free-to-play players. If you don't have those crazy things at 6-star, you will always have a 6-star Matthew, so that's pretty solid. So Shoujo Jessica is pretty good with her special gear. Yeah, the problem for her is still the low mobility issue. Yeah, and it's just it's not as good as the other characters. It's hard for Shoujo Jessica to follow up in some case. In certain map, for example the Sky map, she can be pretty solid. Chris, yeah, Chris is very good dispel. Chris is actually a little bit better than Chloe because Chris can also do the mass attack, so it can be a small faction buff. Archam is very good against some assassins. You know, having extra life is always pretty good. So if you have a single target focused game, having Archam in the box, meaning that unless those assassins are using Shinobi, otherwise he's not killable by assassins. That's always pretty nice, and his damage is actually not very low. With the support of these characters, he's like with the help of other characters, he still can kill the juggler. And also Boron is, I mean, it's still a decent AoE damage dealer, right? You still use the, you can still heal block, but yeah, it's just not as good as the other character. He still has mobility issue. Verner is actually pretty solid. Her damage is leaking, but she can buff a lot of the other AoE character. Her AoE cannot really do that much. You can only dispel one buff, so it's not super ideal but still useful. Maiya is actually a situational character, right? The reason I put Maiya in the backup is only because, by the way, those characters are all backup characters. So in specific situations, they can be good. If you are fighting against a lot of debuff, right? Chris and Chloe can also be good. If you are fighting against a lot of assassins, then maybe you can use Archam. And then if you are fighting against, if you have a lot of impair characters in your box, then Burn can be a faction buffer. If you use AoE strategy, Verner can be a strong AoE buffer. Then Maiya is very good against the demon, so if they are still using Demon Basil, Demon Rennie, Demon Listel, or Demon Hihei, which is not very common, but Demon Zareda is becoming more popular. So basically, if you know your opponent is going to use any of those demon characters, Maiya basically destroys demon. Yeah, Maiya single-handedly destroy a demon team. It's not just to destroy the demon, it destroys the team, which includes demon. So we can talk about this more when Maiya comes, but yeah, it's a very, very interesting character to put in the backup box. It can fuck any of those demon team up. Yeah, so basically if you have demon in your team, her AoE can let you suffer. And the Strocia is very good in the wall map, so it's very situationally. Only in the wall map probably and in the bridge map you will pick Joshua. The other case, because Joshua is just very easy to play against. If you just put the fix to immune damage, then Joshua cannot do much. Angelica here really needs a box to work with her. Like you have to have a time faction box with Sumer in the box, then maybe she's good. But that's kind of the only, yeah, that's the only case you will use her. Omega, you use him when when you see your opponent didn't have enough skill, then they are not showing respect to Omega, so you can use Omega. Shrinka is basically to play against the players who don't know Shrinka. Shrinka is a player that is a character that she can be very strong or she can do nothing, right? It all depends on if your opponent is familiar with her or not. And yeah, it's kind of similar to these Frequia, right? You can like play against the Frequia easily, but if your opponent is not familiar with them, their characters, they have a lot of squashy characters to kill, then maybe you can put them in a box. Sophia works pretty well with either of the team. Like Rewind is a strong skill for like single target characters like Claret, or like AoE characters like Basil and Rennie. It's just compared to the other healers, she's not as good as the other healers, so I'm not sure about the priority of putting her in the box. But if you have a very good plan with her, maybe you can use her. Same thing for Akeya. Akeya is a very strong supportive unit. It's just it's not very easy to work with Akeya, so you have to have a specific plan. This is why those characters are in a backup. It is not like those characters are bad, it's just more like these characters are very situational. And I need to say some special notes. So Amanda is actually pretty good after she got the 3 cost skill, but sadly we won't have that for season 4, so I'm not super big fan of using Amanda before season 5. Because I do think she got an interesting 3 cost skill that can make the debuff team stronger. But right now, yeah, without 3 cost, it is still lacking something. So Oliver here is a very interesting character. Oliver can be a very strong assassin in the game. If you have, but I only recommend you to build him if you have extra resource. Like if you spend plenty in this game, you have already built all the other things you want. You still have extra resource. You can build Oliver. He can surprise your enemy, especially in the wall map. He's one of the characters that is very strong in the wall map as well. Livni, yeah, Livni is pretty good with the acid burn. She can also do aim and she can retreat after applying an AoE. And her 3 cost skill have teleport, So she's a pretty interesting character, but it's just it feels like she's not enough because the debuff is not at the same level, the damage is not there. She's super squashy, so there's just a lot of drawbacks for this character. So yeah, I mean if you love her, you can use her, uh, but she is not going to be in the tier list. Outmoner is very good if you are playing a strategy faction. Right now, there are plenty of good characters in strategy faction, like Night of Mystery, Verner. They are both strategy faction. Like Olivia is strategy faction. Like Luna strategy faction. Reinforce is strategy faction. So there are a couple of good strategy faction characters there. So if you use them, then maybe you can use Outmoner. Outmoner can be pretty tanky. So for example, if you want to tank one hit from Night of Mystery, if you want to tank one hit from like Sonia, that's all possible. That's all possible. But she don't do much against just tanking. Like she don't provide enough support to your characters. So yeah, so that's his problem. And leading after getting 3 cost skill is useful, but yeah, it's just your opponent is going to know what leading do, right? They can easily just let your leading not be very effective. So I think in the not in the playoff, like in a regular season, leading is okay to play to have some fun, but in the playoff, leading is very risky to pick. Same thing with Freya, like if you pick Freya, I know I should not hit you with Claret. I know I should not hit you with no single target. I know I should just go AoE and assassins to kill your other units. So, I mean, Freya is a solid tank. She can tank pretty good. She can even call a faction buff for Origin of Light. It's just you have any other method to play around. And Alfred is a very interesting character. He has actually very high mobility with his skill. It's just his damage is not there. So and he cannot break the tank. He cannot he cannot assassinate others or deal any AOE damage. It is impossible for him to kill a tank. So there's still limitations here. Grenier is pretty good tank also. Grenier also has kill potential for cavalry landings. So, I mean, if you really want to kill landings and you have no good method, maybe you can try to use Grenier to suppress your enemy. But other than that, Grenier's usage is still limited. Ioven is pretty sad. So, compared to Yulia, they have kind of similar issue. They don't have huge mobility. Right now, Ioven, yeah, it's actually pretty hard for Ioven to kill anything. The land use, if you are using Lancer land use, then it counters Ioven a lot. Ioven cannot really kill tanks, cannot really kill struggler. If you are using Sword Ioven prepare for Estil, then maybe that's probably one of the situations he can be still good. But it's just a low mobility makes Ioven very hard to reach the enemy. For example, if I'm using an AoE team, or I'm using Assassin team, your Ioven is still going to die from Hihe, right? For Assassins. And your Ioven basically cannot do anything against any AoE here. So yeah, it's just it's a character that you can still use, but like those characters in special note, you can use them, but it's just to be prepared that if you are using them in a playoff, they can be very hardly countered. But in a regular season, maybe you can still find them a spot to have fun. So this is all about the Season 4 tier list. And in the end, I still want to say this is still a personal tier list, so don't get mad if some of the characters you enjoy are ranked pretty low. Those are still based on my personal experience in the Chinese server and also in when I watch the other players to play. So those are very personal experience. Okay, so that's all about this video. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys the next time. Peace.